And we had some discussion about, you know, if any changes might happen to the overlay districts, what might they be? So in some of the outcomes, as Mark had articulated at the April 12th town board meeting, it was kind of the consensus of the group or the folks at that particular meeting that the decreases in density should not be implemented as a group, or all of those that you see on the map, those different blue shades. Maybe it's not such a good idea to implement all of those at once. You know, there were concerns about potential impact to property owners if those residential overlay zoning maps, if that map implemented the changes to decrease the allowable density as compared to what is allowable today. You know, certainly there's some property owners that would probably feel like they've been negatively impacted by taking away potential development units if you were to decrease the allowable density. However, maybe there's some consideration that could be had in exceptional circumstances where maybe the town board sometime in the future on a case-by-case basis decides, well, you know, it would really make sense to decrease the allowable density here. You know, maybe there's some preservation movement somewhere in a particular area of the town. So that was the first outcome. The second outcome, actually, go to the next slide. I might have to. So as you can see, I'll just point out on this, I don't know if this is going to work. So over here on this map, for those in the audience, I've got my red cursor around that area where potential decrease in density was identified. Same thing over here, potential decrease in density. There was also a very small location just south of the village where the comp plan considered decreasing residential density, and then also just off of Benson Road, off of 96, potential decrease in residential density. Next slide, if we could. Also, as part of those preliminary discussions, we talked about the increase in residential density, and there seemed to be some agreement in the room that those increases shouldn't be implemented as a group or as a whole. It might be acceptable to implement those on a case-by-case basis, and it's more likely, you know, the folks in the room felt it might be more likely to be viewed favorably versus the density decreases that I just previously mentioned. So, you know, we wanted to bring these ideas to the entire board so that you could discuss them. Maybe we could get some feedback on them, and maybe broaden that discussion a little bit more. If we could go to the next slide. One of the things that we would want to do after some deliberation here at the town board is document your preferences, right? Maybe do a straightforward amendment to the comprehensive plan if needed, if desired, so as to reflect the potential changes that you'd want to see, if you wanted to see them take place as a whole or just on a case-by-case basis. And also make those changes, make those preferences known in the draft sanitary sewer master plan, which has yet to be adopted. Because I guess we're feeling that depending on your preference for residential density changes, that may impact the sanitary sewer master plan, the content of that. And one of the things that we should note also in that concept level future land use map that's identified in the comp plan is that map did not take into consideration the 2016 Farmington Victor sewer master plan, where it was identified where potential sanitary sewer district extensions or sewer infrastructure could be extended. And that plan in 2016, the Victor Farmington plan, basically used the existing medium neighborhood residential density as a potential sanitary sewer extension areas. So so even though we see those cross-hatchings from the comp plan, that didn't take into consideration so much the current condition of the existing sanitary sewer conveyance infrastructure, or certainly the draft sewer plan as it stands now, or the 2016 plan. So I think just simply because the comp plan identified those crosshatches in particular areas and potential changes, conditions have changed, right? And information has changed. So does it mean you have to adopt those as they are on the map? No. And certainly, some of you board members weren't on the board at the time the comp plan was created and adopted. Some of you were, but maybe your preferences have changed. I don't remember, that might be the last slide that I have. Potential impacts. Maybe something that we could talk about and discuss are potential impacts for changing the residential overlay densities. It's going to impact your transportation system, your utilities, including your sanitary sewer, quality of life, neighborhood character, and maybe some other characteristics as well. But at least wanted to get that discussion back out in front of you as a board and hear what your thoughts might be.
Thank you, Wes. So board members will back up. Certainly some familiar faces here in the audience that have presented to the board recently, and a lot of what drove my rationale for having this workshop was because I know there's some planned development, even at today's density build-out, that would affect Pump Station 7 over in the East Victor Road area. So I wouldn't mind starting in that area to hear your comments on this, and what your feelings are, whether or not you feel we should leave it as is, or certainly and consider increasing density in that area.
Susie, could we go back to that future concept level future land use map that shows some of that cross? There we go. Perfect. I think Jack, you're talking about this particular area over here in the south east corner of the town. See that the area that's already developed has a particular residential overlay. Is that overlay B? I don't have the map in front of me, but and then immediately adjacent to that is a vacant parcel. It's about 100 acres in size. That, I believe, is a different residential overlay district. It's immediately adjacent. Yeah, maybe we could go back to the existing zoning map.
Fieldcrest and Sunray Crest,
Okay.
Boca Park Estates.
We go back a few slides, Susie, when you get a chance. There we go. A couple more, maybe. There we go. That's perfect. That's good. So this area is residential B, right? Boca Park, the existing houses there. Immediately adjacent, and you've got a dead-end road here at the end of the street. Is that Fieldcrest?
Yes.
Okay, at the end of Fieldcrest, there's a dead end, and then there's an immediate transition to the residential A overlay district, which allows 0.33 units per acre. So the developed part offered half unit per acre, whereas immediately adjacent, there's 0.3 units per acre allowance. So, and any potential conveyance of sanitary sewer flows, I'm suspecting can be accommodated via a gravity system, and no sewer pump stations would need to be required in that area. And there might be two potential alternatives for conveying the sanitary sewer flows in that area.
I assume, Tim, when I look at that and I see that jut out for that development, that zoning has changed and that's also built that or not?
I think when Boca Park Estates was approved, that overlay district didn't exist at that point. So that was approved prior, that subdivision was approved prior to the residential overlay districts being adopted.
Okay.
So it probably doesn't even meet the B overlay. It's probably more dense than the B overlay. If that makes sense?
No, it does. I mean, I think, you know, I've been here almost, and the hard part is that, well, first and foremost, I'm not interested in any more restriction. As a landowner, as far as a property rights guy, I wouldn't be interested in that part of it. I think when we went through that comp plan, I think R3 was as restrictive as the residents were willing to accept, and felt that they kind of backed off at the R3. That was my recollection on that. I also get confused. Jeff has done all this work on Willis Hill and Strong. Looking at the potential changes on the concept, and it's kind of Jeff's area over there off of Willis and Strong, and it's Dave's area over here on 41 and Southgate. And I'm going to have those guys come out to Lazy Road tomorrow and start bidding. We're on the 350 acres over there on Gillis Portal, and I'd like to get that one into a density increase. I mean, I'm being flippant, but my point is, Farmington Sewer sits there and says, sure, no, build it out, keep it coming, let it go. So we are sitting here trying to make decisions on density in overlay districts. And we've got somebody else calling the shots at Farmington Sewer, technically, because they'll say, yeah, we can handle it, but we're going to need more. And we've spent a lot of time on trying to figure out excess capacity and flows and all of that. Is the town going to have to step up for preservation and buy some land and say, we need to preserve more areas and start getting some park plans like Farmington has down the road? I don't know. I don't know what the appetite is for the residents for that. The one thing that I think to me seems really back-asswards is that Jeff does all this planning, all this work, all these meetings with the planning board, and to my recollection, we haven't extended the sewer yet. That has to come from the town board. So does the town board become handcuffed to say, sewer's going to be extended because all the work's been done? And it seems to me like it should be the other way. So that's a little sense of the frustration. I'm not saying that these aren't good plans. I'm not saying that these aren't good ideas. But there's a level of frustration right
The hardest thing that I see is, and I was on the comp plan, and Mark Terrian was on when we did a tremendous amount of work, but the thing that we have to realize is when we did that, when we started it, we took what we had at the time, which was a sewer district, a sewer structure that wasn't involved with Farmington. We had what we had. Our infrastructure was in place, and it was probably weak for as fast as Victor was growing. So we decided that those maps that you have there, we tried to assemble what Mark called infill areas. If you were going to do it today, what would be the areas that we would be available to and capable of making an infill area? And you would concentrate on those first, based on the infrastructure that we had in place. The districts outside of that, we tried to base it around the fact that how far into the future would they have any ability to do anything. At the time, there wasn't water on any of the south, on Boughton Hill, east, or south, and east and west, and they did put water from the hill down, but the voters voted against a water district going from 444 towards Honey Eye Falls, and that slowed that area down. It changed how that was going to be perceived in the future for development, and those people said, we don't want it. When we were involved in the comp plan, we didn't know what was going to happen there, but we tried to take the areas that would be next, should we ever have the infrastructure in place. Now it has changed a little bit in the southeast portion, because there's been houses that have been approved with the extension of a district, and like Jack was asking, what should we do in those areas first? It's all based on the fact that now that there's probably capacity in the sewer, once the master plan is in place, but now how do you enforce it to make it fair for everybody and not just say, okay, we'll move a leg of it here or a leg of it there, or we'll make just one leg up to this corner and not worry about the rest of it, versus putting the whole sewer plan in place. And once that happens, and once water goes to areas that have taken longer to get to, then you can look at it differently. So in my view, it definitely has to be more of a case-by-case scenario, because we don't know what's going to happen there in the future, and it's going to be all encumbersome on the developer or whoever to get it to that area, unless we have it in place. And you have to make it fair for the whole stretch and not just the one development. That's a tough thing to do. We were probably, we were behind the times when we worked on the comp plan, and once the comp plan was in place, and it took a number of years to get into place, we found out that, I think it's obvious, we found out that things are going faster than we are. We're in a position now where developers want to come in, they have plans in place, and we still don't have the whole view of what we want it to be in the end. And that's what we're fighting now. What we're facing is we're basically not adhering to what the comp plan was when it first was put into play. We don't have those strict infill areas versus the R3 areas where everybody at the time voted that they wanted to keep it that way. Now those are probably the areas that developers are looking at most. So one thing, in my opinion, we have to do is we have to, look at all four corners and say, if we're gonna do anything at all, where does it make sense, and where is it fair to everybody else, and where does it not infringe on property values on the people around there? I don't know what the answer is there yet, but I think we're at that point.
One of the things that I could mention is this particular corner of the town that we're talking about near East Victor Road, the intersection of East Victor Road and Boughton Hill Road. The town board did extend the sanitary sewer district in that area. So these areas that we're talking about currently, right here, although the sewer infrastructure, the piping isn't in, the district has been extended. So those properties are in the district, at least. So for example, I guess maybe one of my reactions is that maybe the town would be more skeptical or question or maybe scrutinize it more carefully if there was an area where the developer was looking to increase the density, but there wasn't the sewer district already established. So I guess in this case, you do have that sanitary sewer district there. There is the water benefited area. There are other areas of the town, for example, where actually the Anderson parcel and other areas surrounding the Anderson parcel, I think there was a potential increase in density identified in that part of the town. Well, the sanitary sewer district is in the process of being extended in that area, right, for the Anderson project. But beyond that, in those particular areas, maybe that's an area where you say, I'm not quite sure that we want to increase the residential density in those areas, because maybe one of the reasons is the district isn't there, and also the number of pump stations that the sanitary sewer would have to go through on the west side of town towards Mendon. Just a thought.
Yeah, that McCarthy parcel you referenced, I think my recollection is we denied the additional build on that. Only build what it would under the current residential. That's my recollection. I think there was a request for transfer of developmental rights and from another parcel, and we declined. Kim, question for you. The Boco Park Estate, you mentioned the overlay was prior to the establishment of, it's probably close to a B overlay as far as the density. Is that what you, if you had to,
I would think it's probably more closer to the C overlay than it is to the B overlay. And I don't know, I haven't done the math, so I don't know, but
okay.
it's pretty dense. It was probably close to 80 lots, maybe 70 some lots, if I recall correctly. I don't remember. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you remember when it was built.
I do remember when it was built, but I don't remember what year it was. I think it was the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did hear somebody mention, or at least one other board member mention, that they might consider this on a case-by-case basis. If someone were, if an application were to be filed for rezoning, or a petition to adjust the residential overlay zoning map, for a particular project, I mean, is that something that you feel as a board, individual members, that you would entertain?
It's not so much that I would entertain it. I don't think we have a lot of choice in certain cases unless we say, whoa, until we know exactly, like, and use the Anderson property as an example. We got a sewer. Do we just say, okay, we're going to have a sewer enough to go to Willis Hill into a development, or do we say, we're going to prevent, if we don't go any further and we don't allow it any further, there's people on the west side of Strong Road that are probably in the very near future going to get kind of mad at us. Do we do it based on, I mean, we have to look at it, how far are we going to go? Are we going to take that quadrant and go and put the pump station in necessary, which they're working on, to not just accommodate one development? Are we going to look at it from the standpoint that if we're going to allow it there, that we have to look at the whole area and say, should it happen? And it's probable that it will, that once something happens on the Anderson property, that's the beginning of something. Do we have, I think we'd be smart to take that into consideration on what we're going to do, that not just for one property and not one we know I just assuming that if something happens on Boughton Hill Road and like it is now in two quadrants, that it's only going to be the start of something else. There's going to, there's going to be requests for connection once it's there. We voted on coming up to the end of East Victor Road, and the developer was going to bring the sewer to that district, and I think we decided that it had to be to our specifications, should there be connectivity in the future, that, we got to assume that it's possible it's going to happen. Is that right? Am I? Yeah.
Oh, you're correct.
So, in my opinion, case by case meant that we have to look at it from the standpoint of, if we do this, is it fair to more than just, one development, one parcel, one everything? We talked about that in the comp plan discussions with Mark in the past, and of not creating a windfall for one area that would prevent multiple other areas from, any type of development, up in Dave's quadrant. We're forced, and it's unfortunate that we have large pieces of property that were former farmers in Victor, where the intent back in the day was to keep as much agriculture as we could, and it's gotten nearly impossible to do that. So what's our plan B? We weren't ready for plan B. We just kept status quo for probably too long a period of time.
Ed or Drew, any comments?
Yeah, I think the one thing that stuck out in my mind a little bit is when we go the big jumps. So proposed changes for greater density from least to highest. I think that's too much in my mind. It changes the character of the neighborhood or the area. Same thing going the other way, right? When you go from, highest density to rural. You know, I think that, in my mind, I don't think that those are good moves, to have such a big jump. Especially when we're looking at that southeast corner, and you're looking at moving one area from least density to medium, and then the one next to it goes least density to highest, right? Along the East Victor Road.
Yep, I think you're reading that map correct.
Yeah, so, you know, to me, that area just seems like that's too much. It would be too much of a jump to go to least to highest. I could think about, for sure, least to medium in conjunction with the bottom half of that section, but to go that big jump to, from least to most, I think it changes everything over there. And not to be like Farmington, but, you know, with the growth that we see down along there as you go towards 332, my fear is that becomes like that. And I wouldn't want to see that. I would not be in support of that.
Very good points, especially the highest density to rural and least density to the highest. I think, and Councilman Condon touched on that too. I hate to see anyone who's been certainly farming land for so many, many years to certainly have it changed, where it would, all those years of, you know, holding out that would be their retirement or 401k, that certainly the land value would decrease and hurt them that way. So I don't think, certainly, I think overwhelmingly we would be opposed to any proposed changes for less density.
I have a hard time, I agree with Mike, in that I have a hard time making a blanket, you know? I think a lot of it, you know, to be honest with you, credit of Dave and Jeff, I mean, you've got some people that are invested at work. They've had to jump through a lot of hoops to continue to make that work for themselves, as well as for the town. But I'd hate to go blanket and put certain areas in that overlay. I think at this point, I think we have to do it case by case. Until the you know, the board, if the board in the town decides, and obviously development doesn't save you money, you know, costs you money. We all get that. And with your infrastructure. Taking farmland. I don't know where this town will go in the next, I think it's gonna happen quick. I think it's gonna happen in this decade, in terms of whether or not this town decides they wanna pony up and start looking at chunks of land. Parkland and preservation, more preservation. I don't think you can zone it. I think if you want that on a real serious basis, you have to start looking at moves to make that happen. Take it to the voters, take it to appetite is.
It's going to be really tough, because if you just go around the town, there's some people here that know the names. You know the names, obviously, but when you take those corridors, you take Emery, you take Guinan, you take Dillman, you take Benson's, you take all of the big farms, the last of the ag districts that are around,
Yeah.
the Gillis property,
Water, there's very few succession
Waters.
plans. Very few succession plans.
We've lost probably 7 to 8 of those major landowners in the last 10 years, and the succession of their property, we know if it's not being rented by somebody outside of Victor, we don't have the scope of agriculture that we'd like to have, like Farmington does. Farmington still has a tremendous amount of agriculture, and they can their corridor on the outskirts, they can do what they're doing and still not hurt their total egg. But it's getting there to that point, and we have to look at it as a plan of, we should be looking at what may be our future development areas, because, that's where everybody wants to be. Just like now the Mandrino property is consumed with houses.
Right, and that, that also becomes, so you end up losing some of those small guys that were renting a few hundred acres here or there, like the Steve Straits or whatever. I mean, obviously he aged out, but he also, it becomes very problematic transferring farm equipment from one side of the town to the other.
Oh, yeah,
So
but,
trying to get across 96, you have to find out what time of the day you're going to, move your equipment and all of that. And that's all predicated on our growth as well.
Might be a little bit outside this discussion here, but has the town in the past, I know we currently don't do it, but have we considered something like what Pittsford does, where you're buying some development rights from these farm owners and large landowners?
The biggest problem is when you buy, and it'd be great if we could do it, but like in Pittsford, what they did, they bought the development rights. Webster did a tremendous, Pittsford in a long time ago spent $1 million when $1 million was a lot of money. And they bought farmers and the families still kept farming it. They purchased the development rights, but the same family, it was a family farm. They just did, Brocklebanks just did a tremendous thing with over there, and they're still farming. It's a family farm, and there's a generation involved, and you have to prove that there's a generation involved, and you can keep going, and they buy the development rights, and it's still being farmed. Here, it's Bob Bowe coming all the way from Pumpkin Hook, it's Strikers coming from Farmington, and the land is being rented, and there's not a good way to purchase the development rights and assure that it's going to keep on being farmed. Then you can't give $1 million to a family to keep farming it, and they want to keep, and they can keep farming it when there's not a family farming it.
Richard took that money on 332 and went and bought more land, more,
Yeah.
because it's a thriving, generational operation.
So it'd be a great thing if we could do it, but we don't have the property now that would be suitable for that. Webster did a tremendous amount up along 250 up in there with Wilmus's and all them. They bought the orchards, and they bought all the development rights, but they're still being farmed by the families that had them. They got a bunch of money to keep farming them and stay there and live there, but I don't know where we could do that in the town of Victor. I'd love it, but I don't know.
Yeah, Webster had some success stories there, and they, I know also, speaking to the supervisor a number of years ago, they also had a failed referendum because they had too much land with no plan, and that was voted down. So, if, get a lot of, maybe potential landowners saying, yeah, I'll sell, but without a plan, what would the town do with this? So I think that really needs to be.
It happened in Pittsburgh too, where they bought Willards and they bought Knickerbockers and they bought all that property, and there was family members still there. Now those family members are aging out.
Right, I don't think Knickerbockers have the next.
They don't, and the Willards are, and now the town is Pittsburgh is looking to buy it back in some. They bought some of it back and built a school there, because that was in that whole parcel, and they had to take some of it back, but.
And to Dave's point, he mentioned Steve Straight, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's the last active farmer that just retired?
The active, and it's not his total, that's not what he's living off. Kurt Dillman's probably the only owner farmer left in Victor that's doing just a small amount, that it's actually his own. Steve didn't own much, he rented everything. Kurt owns is what he did since, again, Sonny passed and those properties came together, and he's farming it, and it's way, way more than a hobby, but it's not his occupation. It's his retirement job. I don't know of anybody other than Kurt that's actually farming their own land.
Well, Jack Water, but again,
Yeah.
hobby, more.
And he's doing it with Bob Bowe's equipment
Yeah,
and doing it, and it's
exactly.
a shared thing, and he likes doing it, and,
So Drew, very good point. If 15 years ago, if we had that active farming community, certainly we'd be better served. I did hear, according to what Wes did say, though, that back to East Victor Road, so that area because we did extend beyond 41 for that parcel there. That is within the zone, within the sewer district. Correct.
Yep. If you don't have a copy of the sewer district map in front of you, I think it's the second to last slide, Susie. There it is. So you can see Fountain Hill Road right here, and you can see on the east and west sides of East Victor Road, and then just south of Fountain Hill Road, 41, all that area is in the sanitary sewer district.
Okay, so that's within that sewer district. Sounds like overwhelmingly case-by-case scenario with parcel by parcel. Yes, sir.
So specific to, I guess, what we're talking about, I do see a benefit in considering these case by case and going to a higher density, just because I know that the project that was put before us is just a draft concept for that East Victor Road project. You know, I guess I see the smaller lots do allow in these divisions for a little bit more a conservation easement area, and I think that, you know, to a large degree, rather than like the estate-style homes, where like there was a couple of them proposed for 41, single driveways, larger properties versus the more of a neighborhood density type setting. I think to a certain degree, that is, to me at least, attractive, because you have, you know, residential communities that attract families, but you still have that preservation of the natural land, rather than maybe a larger lot size, more, cared for plots of land, more yard space. I don't necessarily think that sometimes is better than smaller lot sizes and more preserved area with the conservation easements. So I think to that degree, if it's done right, I do like the looks of those developments.
Thank you for your comments. And I'll just make a comment. So switching over to the southwest side, over towards Strong Road, Strong and Willis. Again, Mr. Smith pursuing that, the McCarthy land, I guess, would be. In other words, my own opinion, if we said no to this, I don't see where we would increase it. You know, certainly, at least I would not be in favor of that. I look at the development by Dryer, off of Dryer. I think that's the kind of density that I envision in that area. In my own thoughts, any of these proposed changes to less density, I'd say leave them as is. Board members, I don't know if you have any more comments.
Kim,
Kim,
do
you have anything you want to share?
Well, before Bob Cantwell calls me tomorrow,
Yeah.
what's our next steps? Or what's their next step? That's my question.
Well,
Well, because you're a shy individual. But what I would suggest, what I've heard, is case by case with an application to the town board.
Petition the town board, is that how we're gonna handle this?
I think.
That's what I heard.
I think before, they can file that petition at any time, but I think, just in terms of documenting the planning that's gone in and the thinking, I might actually also suggest a small amendment to the comprehensive plan, just as a follow-up, here's, not to replace and delete what was in there, or delete that map, but just kind of rationalize what the current town's board's feelings are.
Because the end result is we want to adopt the sewer master plan.
Right.
And that's why we need to amend. Okay.
Yep. I think that's what I'd like to do, but I think at any time, I mean, that's not going to prohibit a potential property owner from filing a petition to amend the zoning map. And I think that amendment can be done pretty quickly with the comp plan.
The residential overlay district
Correct.
correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Yep.
Not the zoning map,
Overlay.
Residential overlay zoning, yep.
Is it, that the direction? Okay.
Okay.
You're in agreement? Okay.
All right.
Okay, Wes.
All right, thanks.
Kim, thank you. Take a recess until the 7 PM start time.